In September 1969, just a month after playing together for the first time, and 6 months before their debut album together, David Crosby, Stephen Stills, Graham Nash and Neil Young took to the stage at the Fillmore East in New York City for some remarkable concerts. Compiled and mixed by Stephen Stills and Neil Young from a newly discovered tape, a recording of one of those shows, called Live at the Fillmore 1969, has just been released by Rhino, and in this video, I'm going to review it. Although this is primarily a Beatles channel, I love all music from the 1960s, and Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young is no exception. So when Rhino sent me a copy of this album, I thought I'd share my thoughts on it with you. David Crosby, Graham Nash and Stephen Stills had released their debut album back in May 1969, but it wasn't until August of that year that Neil Young joined them for the first time, on stage at their second gig at Woodstock. A month later, they were back together again for a short series of shows at the legendary Fillmore East in New York City. And this new double album captures their fourth show of that short residency, from September the 20th. The set list they performed that September night comprised 21 songs, which has been trimmed to 17 for this set, presumably so it will fit onto a double vinyl album. But the results are one of, if not the, finest officially released live performances in their catalogue. But before we get into this, it's impossible to ignore and not compare it with this, their first live album. Released in April 1971, Four-Way Street was the follow-up to Deja Vu and documented their 1970 tour, which also included performances from the Fillmore East in New York City. Both the new album and Four-Way Street are remarkably similar in format. Both are double albums, which are divided up into one acoustic disc and one electric. This new album contains a great setlist, mixing songs from the Crosby, Stills and Nash album, along with the then unreleased tracks from Deja Vu, and enhanced by some early Neil Young and Buffalo Springfield tracks. Side 1 opens up with their signature song, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, which they had performed at Woodstock. The version presented here is more polished, and whereas it only appeared as a fragment on Four-Way Street, the new album gives you a full and fantastic 8 minutes. It's followed by a joyful cover of the Beatles' Blackbird, before they launch into a sublime trio of tracks from the Crosby, Stills and Nash album, Helplessly Hoping, Guinevere and Lady of the Island. The harmonies on these tracks are truly breathtaking and are for me the highlight of the acoustic disc. The Crosby-penned Guinevere is especially gorgeous.
Guinevere had golden hair like yours, my lady, like yours.
Go Back Home, a track from Stephen Stills' as then unreleased debut solo album, opens up side 2, which is in turn followed by a wonderful acoustic version of the opening track to Buffalo Springfield's final album, Last Time Around, On the Way Home. That then leads into Stephen Stills' song 4+20, which would appear a few months later on the Deja Vu album, along with the track which follows it, which is one of Graham Nash's best-known songs.
I'll light the fire.
Written by Nash while living with Joni Mitchell in Laurel Canyon, he sings it solo, accompanying himself on the pump organ. Free from the harmonies that would accompany the track on Deja Vu, it's a very intimate performance, made even more special by the fact that Joni was in the audience that night. Neil then takes centre stage with a track from his 1968 debut album, the short but sweet I've Loved Her So Long, followed by You Don't Have to Cry. This track, taken from the Crosby, Stills and Nash debut album, was the first song they sang together, and was the one where they discovered how well their voices blended. It's also the perfect way to bring the acoustic set to an end. Moving on to the electric disc, side 3 opens up in electrifying fashion, with 2 of David Crosby's most stinging songs, Long Time Gone and Wooden Ships, both taken from the Crosby, Stills and Nash debut album. Stephen Stills then moves over to the organ and gives us Bluebird Revisited, a song written as a response to his Buffalo Springfield song Bluebird. This was another as yet unreleased track which wouldn't appear until his second solo album in June 1971. Side 3 closes with Neil Young's Sea of Madness, a song they'd performed at Woodstock just 6 weeks earlier. Side 4 of the vinyl contains just 2 tracks and brings the album to a climax. First up is an epic 16-minute version of Down by the River from Neil's second solo album, Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. Neil Young himself has described this version as the definitive version, and who am I to argue? The album comes to a close in the same way Four-Way Street does, with Stephen Stills' beautiful ode to the Vietnam War dead, Find the Cost of Freedom, a studio version of which didn't appear on an album until this 1974 compilation called So Far, but it's the perfect way to end this one. Like Four-Way Street, this isn't an audiophile album, but the sound quality for recordings of this age is remarkable. Although being a bit ragged at times, this album captures perfectly how a live gig from 1969 sounded. Whether it was due to time constraints or just artistic license, there's not as much between-song banter on this new album as there was on Four-Way Street, which for me is the only negative thing about it. Now, it's well known that Neil Young is an analog guy, so it's no surprise that the vinyl is all analog AAA, and I must say that this really is a superb pressing. It's been expertly mixed by John Hanlon, superbly mastered by Chris Bellman at Bernie Grundman Mastering, and pressed with care by Record Industry in the Netherlands. This for me is everything an archive vinyl pressing should be. Heavy, flat, silent, smooth-edged vinyl, and housed in quality poly-lined inners. This initial period of their relationship was such a happy time for them all, and you can almost hear them smiling throughout the set, and it's good to see that they've all put their differences to one side for the sake of this release, and have even dedicated it to David Crosby. This is a great recording of a great show, and is an essential release not just for fans of Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, but for anyone who loves music from this period, and I highly recommend it. So big thanks to Rhino for sending it to me, and I'll put a link in the description to where you can order it from. I also want to give an honourable mention to 2 other albums they kindly sent me in the same package. First up is this, Crosby, Stills & Nash's multi-platinum 3rd studio album, with this fabulous yacht rock cover, titled simply CSN. This pressing was part of Rhino's Sounds of the Summer series, and is pressed on Sea Blue vinyl, which is well worth checking out. Then there's the album which kept it from the top of the Billboard charts in August 1977, Fleetwood Mac's Rumours. This pressing is on Forest Green vinyl. Again, I'll put links in the description to where you can order them both from. Thanks again, Rhino. I hope you enjoyed this departure from our regular programming, but don't worry, there's a ton of Beatles and related videos coming up. Next weekend, we'll be reviewing the 50th anniversary box set of George's Living in the Material World, the unboxing of which you may have seen already. That, of course, is followed by the Beatles' 1964 US albums in mono box set, not to mention the Disney Plus documentary and the 60th anniversary of Beatles for Sale. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any of those. So why not get yourself ready for that by watching this video? But that's all for this week, so I'll say bye for now, and thanks for watching.